When we are working with change, we know that many people in an organization can become quite uncertain. Maybe they're afraid and also out of place. And my own personal experience is that we as leaders driving change sometimes underestimate the importance of psychological security. So therefore, I'm very happy to welcome back on stage Jillian Carson-Jackson. Please join us. With her, she will also be joined by some panelists. Chris Hall, please welcome back on stage. We have Gayani de Alwis, please welcome back on, come on stage. And then we have Mrs. A.K. Joshi. And last but not least, we also have Avishkar Srivastava.
This is an incredibly important topic. It's one that's very close to my own heart. And I often find that when we think of safety, we tend to think of slip, trips, falls, maybe PPE. It's more on the physical side. If we are to truly focus on diversity for innovation and growth, however, we need to think about psychological safety. Now, I expect you all intuitively have thought of what that means, but I thought I would go to Amy Edmonston. She is the author of a great book. If you haven't read it, you probably should. It's called The Fearless Organization, Creating Psychological Safety in the Workplace for Learning, Innovation, and Growth. And she defines psychological safety as, I have to read this word for word, otherwise I won't get it right. A belief that one will not be punished or humiliated for speaking up with ideas, with questions, concerns, or mistakes, and that the team is safe for interpersonal risk-taking. From a seafarer's perspective, this is really the basis of that speak-up culture that we all learn in our bridge resource management training. Really that opportunity that you feel safe, no matter what your position, the lookout, the master, the officer of the watch, the VTS officer, the tugmaster, everyone feels safe to speak up. In July 2022, Safe Work Australia, and yes, I apologize, I am from Australia. I know the cricket's been out there before. I can't help it, they were good. Everyone was good, it was a great game. But in July 2022, the Safe Work Australia highlighted the issue of psychologically safe work environments in the Code of Practice for managing psychosocial hazards at work. This is the law in Australia. It's very exciting. So psychosocial hazards are those that can cause psychological and physical harm. And I think, as we all know, psychological injuries have a much longer return to work time. They have a greater impact on the work environment, and they significantly impact on our ability as an organization to move forward. So there's so much that we need to talk about with psychological safety. Let's get going on the discussion. Now, I have had a wonderful chat with all of my panelists, and I think we're all on board. What I would like to do is invite you each to introduce yourselves briefly and why you're so passionate about this subject. So I'm going to start with Avishkar.
Thank you, Jillian. Hello, everyone. So I'm Avishkar, and I'm a proud young logistician. I'm from the company, the PDP Group. We are a logistics company based out of Calcutta with over 5 decades of industry experience. Yet I would like to say that we are a 50 years young logistics company, because at a time when the world is changing at such a frequent pace and is becoming such a challenge to stay relevant, we are investing, not just spending, but investing in transforming our human resources, and which is going to have a big impact on the workplace culture. We are the first Indian logistics company from the small and medium sector to have in-house industrial psychologists who are working full-time in our organization. These industrial psychologists helps us understand the underlying issues which may be hampering the workplace culture, which may be hampering performances of our employees, which we often on the top leadership may not be able to get because we are so busy in growing the company and going for quick results. So it is indeed an honor for me to be a part of this panel, and I really thank Sanjam and Maritime SheEO for having having a discussion on such an important topic, because psychological security, it is not just a luxury, it is a requirement in the current era. And I look forward to sharing more on this in this panel discussion and hearing the views of the distinguished panel. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. H.K. Joshi.
I'm the former CMD Chairperson and Managing Director of Shipping Corporation of India Limited, which happens to be the largest shipping company in India. I've served on the board of SCI and several other companies for 7 years. And by profession, I specialize in financial management and human resources. With respect to the subject that we are going to be discussing today, it's something again which is very close to my heart, and I wouldn't say that I studied it or practiced it, but I think I was lucky or unlucky, whichever way you look at it, that during my term as the chairperson, COVID hit us. And that was the time I think there was a lot of uncertainty, and empathy was something which was most important for an organization to ensure that everybody felt safe, because I think insecurity was in abundance during the COVID. One didn't have to ask it, it was there everywhere. So a lot of empathy, a lot of servant leadership is what I practiced, and that is what actually helped Shipping Corporation to break decades-old records during the COVID. So I have not only practiced it, I've seen the positive results of this.
Thank you so much. Gayani.
Thank you, Sanjam, for inviting my first experience. It's really an interesting environment. I learned a lot in the morning. I'm Gayani Alwis. I call myself a prontrepreneur and a pracademic. Professional entrepreneur, later on after working for Unilever for almost 2 decades, and then joining as an entrepreneur, and a practical academic. That's why I call him pracademic. So I'm an engineer by profession, but later on moved to supply chain. So I call myself a supply chain professional now. So why this is very close to my heart is, fortunately for me, during my childhood, I didn't undergo any gender diversity, whatever the issues that are, because my parents treated two of my siblings, my brother and sister, and myself the same way. So for me, I didn't see there was a difference. But the moment I joined the world of work, you start seeing that, because I was the only female in an engineering environment at Unilever. But luckily for me, the company was very supportive of women, and therefore, cut a long story short, I ended up in the board. So when I joined Unilever with that background, and I realized how difficult it is for women to really thrive in this world of work. So therefore, I formed Women in Logistics and Transport as part of the Chartered Institute of Logistics and Transport, which is a 106-year-old professional body based in the UK. So I founded that in Sri Lanka. Then I realized what a lot of challenges that women go through. If you don't have peace of mind, there is no, passion in whatever you do. So I'm optimistic, so I always look at things in a very positive way. So if you have negativity, you will not be able to thrive in your workplace. So that's why I'm really, passionate about this particular topic.
Very passionate indeed. Thank you very much. Chris.
Hi, my name is Chris Hall. I'm the Managing Director of the Hong Kong office of the American P&I Club. So I run a team there, and essentially I want them to be happy, harmonious, and effective, right? And who knew, but underlying all 3 of these things and more is psychological safety. Google kind of discovered this. They discovered the work of Amy Edmondson about 20 years ago, and they found it was the single most important thing to have effective teams. And it's not that the teams made fewer mistakes, they actually made more mistakes, but then they talked about those mistakes. And it's that feedback loop between the team, up and down, back and forth, that allows for more effective outcome, and also happier and harmonious teams. And so if we care about the 3 Ds that we heard about in the last presentation, we need psychological safety. If we want diversity, innovation, creativity, good business outcomes, we need psychological safety.
That's fantastic, and actually that's really great lead into my next question. And I'm going to actually look at the links between workplace culture that you were just mentioning and psychological safety. So we had a really good example of the work of Amy Edmondson, who keeps coming up. And maybe, I think, Chris, you've put a really good start on that discussion. Maybe I could ask Mrs. H.K. Joshi if you have some thoughts on the link between workplace culture and psychological safety.
Jillian, I think there is a positive correlation between a good work culture and psychological safety in an organization. It's just not that psychological safety is just required. It's actually, according to me, a necessity. Like my co-panelists just talked about, if you've got teams which feel safe, they would speak up. And once they speak up, you've got ideas flowing in the organization. And today we are in such a volatile world where we need to create and innovate all the time. So one person, if at the top, cannot do all the thinking. We've got very productive brains throughout the organization, and we need to ensure that all of these get channelized into the new innovative ideas and thought processes which are there. So the organization culture has to be supportive, it has to be inclusive, it also has to be a little pardoning, because like you just mentioned, mistakes we all make. If the team is scared of making mistakes, they will not take on risks, and if there is no risk, there is no gain. So it's very important that the teams take on risks, learn on the job, are more productive, contribute, and there are challenges which keep them going. That's very important. So the organization culture has to be tuned for that.
That's a really good point that you've linked it into being attuned to this aspect of psychological safety, which sort of makes me think a little bit about innovation in teams. I might just go to Avishkar as well and think about that link between safety, that harmonious and happy environment, the organizational culture, and now let's, if we can bring innovation into that. What are some of your thoughts on that?
So yes, a workplace culture, if we could just put it in a short sentence, it's how an employee would define the organization to their friends or their close family members. Like how does the organization, what is the organization they are working in, the core values. And yes, coming into the innovation part, so one of the things I feel for innovating the work culture, it's very important that as leaders we set our company's mission statement. What is your company's vision? How are you going to have, what are your key value drivers? Once employees are aware that yes, the company I work for, this is the company vision. In order to have a structured vision gives a lot of clarity down the line as well. Because again, psychological security and safety, it's about openness, it's about, as you mentioned, not being punished for voicing our opinions. So if a company's vision is to become a benchmark company in their sector, how are they communicating that vision down the line as well? Because once you're, so I believe that is the innovation which needs to be done. We often have these companies' mission statements in our websites, but even your managers may not remember it. So if we can actually know that by heart, communicate on that and have a dialogue, okay, maybe we can change it around a little bit to adapt with the modern times. So I believe that is an innovative thing which can be done. Yeah.
What a wonderful idea to actually know your mission and vision statement and live it. Have that at your heart. Wouldn't that be amazing? Because you're right, so many of the vision and mission statements say all the right words. But then when you work in the organization, are they actually living that word? Are they actually providing that safe environment? And actually, I'm very grateful. We haven't been told our time's up yet, so that's really good. Thank you very much. I would like to sort of take that innovation line, and I guess before I move on to the next question, I say, did you want to say anything more about that, either Chris or Gayani? Yeah.
If I may add here. Now, I mean, we know the world around is changing at a rapid pace, right? Once upon a time, we spoke about VUCA world, now we talk about Bani world, right? The brittle, anxious, non-linear, and incomprehensible. I mean, we cannot fathom what's happening around us. So it's the new normal. So if you don't allow people to challenge the existing status quo and the conventional wisdom, we will not achieve any creativity from them. so the organizations will not try. So it's important for us to give that freedom of thinking, the decision making, challenging, so that you can create a different picture which is going to be very beneficial for the organization, right?
Thank you. Yes.
Just very briefly, the world is a very complicated place and getting ever more complicated. No one leader can possibly know everything. And so it's up to the leader to be humble and curious and confident enough and secure enough to ask questions and to allow for the innovation to come from the team and the larger company.
That self-confidence in the leadership is, I think, a core element of psychological safety, because when you are trying to be inclusive in an organization, when you're trying to present that psychological safety, you need to have an extra level of self-confidence. We spoke about that earlier today, that you have to be able to give over and realize that, yes, your organization might actually think differently than you. And that could be a good thing. Yes, H.K. Joshi.
Just adding on to that, while leaders should have self-confidence, I think to build up psychological safety and security in an organization, there's no harm if a leader would admit that there's something they don't know. That brings in a lot of team participation, rather than isolating yourself in your glass chamber and saying that you know it all and you're going to dictate. So there has to be self-confidence of being able to admit that you don't know everything, and ideas should generate.
I think that's wonderful, that concept of self-confidence and also removing the isolation. And actually, maybe Gayani, that brings me to a thought for you perhaps. Because of your experience and your work, that I think most of us as girls never really felt there was anything to do with gender bias. I mean, it never existed in our own minds because we just did what we wanted to do. But going into an environment in marine engineering, in an environment which is even less than that 2% of women, what did you feel within that environment from the support? And what might be some practical examples of what we might do better?
Yeah, but I think it's all about how you look at a situation. So yes, there are biases around you, conscious and unconscious, and also there will be challenges around us. But if you're very strong-minded and strong-willed, and if you know this is what you want to achieve in life, and you have to understand how to deal with different situations, because especially in psychological safety and security, if you're not comfortable in uncomfortable situations, you will not be able to achieve what you want in life. So you have to have that conviction in you that you're going to somehow do it, but do it in a way that it is not, make people's relationship become a bit severed, right? So you need to make sure the relationships should be intact, and especially as women, we are good at that. So we should use our emotional, intelligence and social intelligence, all of that. See, all of that put together, I think that's how I really wade through the storms in my career. I mean, yes, there are senior people who wouldn't want you to progress in your career because they think that you're a threat to them. But if you show them that you really mean well and you're there with them together, go up on the career ladder, plus at the same time, you will add value to them as well. So they start accepting you. I think you have to be important. I mean, you have to actually conquer your inner inhibitions and move forward. I think that's what I can talk about.
That's a wonderful thought, and actually it follows in line with a discussion I had at break time on the concept of emotional intelligence, so psychological safety, the concept of stepping back and maybe giving away a bit of power to end up with a much better result is all part of emotional intelligence. And I think I would actually like to just give each one of the panelists just one last opportunity to say your final thoughts on this concept of psychological security, psychological safety, transforming the workplace culture. And this time I'm going to start with Chris.
I think we want to leave today with some maybe practical tips on how we can start with psychological safety or add to what we already have. And one thing, again, coming back to Amy Edmondson, who's the OG in the space, she talks about something that I think we can all do. That companies could do polls and have all kinds of elaborate programs, but something that we can all do if we're leaders, is to go to our teams and set the stage for the challenges that we see ahead of us. And by setting the stage, we're saying, these are the problems, this is what we have to overcome, what do you think we can do, right? Apparently, most leaders, or many leaders, don't ask questions. And so this is kind of flipping the script. It's not just waiting for people to feel safe to come up with something. It's going to the people and saying, look, this is our problem, this is the stage, what do you think we should do? You know, and keep doing that. And if you make that part of your regular practice, I think within a year or so, within your team, you'll have a different organization.
Thank you. Gayani, one tip.
Yeah. I think all of us, most of us who are here today are leaders. I think as leaders, we also have to show our vulnerabilities. If you show your vulnerabilities, your team also feel it's okay to fail, it's okay to make mistakes, and that is a leadership moment for you as well. So therefore, once you create that conducive environment around you, people will start coming to you. Then you can, don't shoot the messenger, just ask what is the issue, not who's at fault. So I think if you practice that, then we will be able to create a better environment.
Thank you. Mrs. Joshi, one tip.
My message is that while psychological safety is very easy to do in small organizations because you can really connect with your teams, it becomes very difficult in large MNCs. Even though Google has done it, Microsoft is working on it. So my message will be, it's a subject which is less talked about, but we need to practice it more, and especially in the larger organizations, because today life is full of stress. Employees should be running to come to office. They should not be dragging their feet to office. I think that is what the objective should be.
Thank you. And last but not least, your top tip, Avishkar.
So one tip which I would like to give is, we talk a lot about the word delegation, how delegation is so important. Yet sometimes delegation is like, you do this project, you do this work, you do that work. So then it just becomes someone is your extended arms. Whereas I feel delegation is about, we have to define the roles and responsibilities of our employees, give them what we expect from them, but let them find their way. So kind of let's give the maps to our managers, to our team leaders, let them find their ways, and we are always there to guide. That would be a tip, like effective delegation is important for growth.
Thank you so much. So our top tips are, ask the questions, turn the tables, be vulnerable, take the chances and practice really what you're preaching, and do that delegation with passion. So I would like to thank all of my panel to their insights that they've provided to this often overlooked topic of psychological safety. It is critical, it is core, and it is something that we really must pay attention to. I would also like to thank the session partner, the International Maritime University, and note the vision that they have as well with continuing to shape that future of seafarers so that we can all be psychologically safe in the future. Thank you.